Hey everybody, Todd Dammit-Kearns here. Welcome to Todd Dammit-Kearns Talks to His Friends. Brought to you today by Metal Social Sunday with Britt Pennella on Instagram Live every Sunday, 3:30 Pacific. Today my guest is a very good friend of mine, a man I'm a huge fan of. He manages to play with both Gene Simmons and Ace Frehley. That's two members of the original lineup of Kiss. He's an incredible talent, an incredible guitar player, amazing songwriter, a very massive talent, and a very good friend. And we are happy to be working on a project together with the Brandon Fields experience, which we're both very excited about. So, let's get to it. Jeremy Asbrock. And I think we are recording.
All right.
How are you, brother?
I'm very good, Todd. How are you doing?
Great. I'm just commenting on the hellacious wasteland you're living in. Yeah.
My backyard, ladies and gentlemen.
That is insane, dude. That's like, I'm super jealous. It's like, but that's so. You're in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes,
now, you grew up in Tennessee?
I did. I grew up about 25 minutes away from Nashville. So.
Oh wow. Okay.
For all intents and purposes, I am a native Nashvilleian. I'm from.
That's amazing, because it's one of those stories that I always have with my Los Angeles friends. You know, all those guys who kind of like, if you grew up in LA, you've already sort of beaten most of us, because everybody's trying to get to LA, Nashville, New York, perhaps, you know, to sort of have careers in showbiz. But the fact that you were just sort of like right there, it must have just been an obvious, like, I'm going to Nashville move.
It was, but honestly, dude, I always planned on moving to LA. I mean, LA is where. Yeah, well, LA is where it was happening, and, you know, I'm 45, so, you know, I was a teenager in the late 80s, and I was already a guitar player, and I already knew I wanted to do this, and that was the plan. And then LA fell apart, and I met some guys to play with, and, you know, very shortly after, I met the Shazam, and then there was just never any reason to move.
Well, it's fascinating, because a lot of that, as like you said, as that scene started to kind of fall apart, it was amazing how many guys actually made their way to Nashville. You know what I mean? Like that's you know, Tom Kiefer and all that.
Man, the list is so long. In fact, 2 days ago, I had lunch with Eddie Ojeda from Twisted Sister.
No way. Is he living out there?
He moved here at the beginning of March.
No way. I played with Eddie like years ago. He's the best. Those Twisted Sister guys are the best. Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So when did he move?
Like the beginning of March. He bought a house here a while back, but they actually made the move here like right after the tornado happened.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Was he still in the city in New York somewhere, or where was he?
Yeah.
Wow, that's gonna be such a culture shock. Like, can you imagine being like a New York guy and then suddenly finding yourself in that backyard that you're looking at right there? It's pretty sweet.
Actually.
It's pretty sweet. So I wanted to say we have met during your time with Gene Simmons, yes, and when Brent was playing with you and all that kind of stuff. So the coolest thing about meeting you guys is it's at first sort of moment within the Talisman, the three of you, Phil Schaus and Ryan Cook and yourself, is this like this three-headed, sleeveless, blue jeans hair monster. I was just kind of like, just this like rock and roll hydra. I was like, who are these guys? And, and the fact that you guys just have like, you clearly have each other's back, both musically and beyond, that I think it's really, really an amazing thing that you guys have been able to kind of, you know, and the fact that you're like, well, this person's backing band, then you can just kind of slide over here is super impressive.
Well, we're all friends first. And
yes.
We were all kind of friends under Kiss.
Oh,
so
yeah.
The fact that this is happening to us is it's just the most awesome thing, because most of the time you get thrown into a musical situation with someone and then you become friends, you know, after that, being in the situation. And this happened in reverse for us, man. We were all like super buds that wound up on this big adventure together. And it's awesome because since we are such huge Kiss fans,
yeah,
one guy doesn't have to come back and hang out and tell the other how awesome it is.
Yeah, yeah, not at all. You're fully aware of how cool it is. Yeah. So going back, is it what exactly was your impetus to getting into music? Was there musical people in your family? Was it just you saw guitar like everybody else and thought, damn, I got Kiss, something like that?
Kiss. And man, it started way earlier than that because I got my first Kiss record when I was my son's age. I was 4.
Wow.
Maybe I was almost 4.
Do you remember which record?
Oh yeah, side 3 and 4 of Alive 2. I've told this story a million times now, but I'll tell it, 1,000,001. There was a kid that lived behind us. He was my brother's age. So let's see, if I was like 4, he would have been like 10 or 11. And he came out one day with only the 2 records from Alive 2. And he's like, hey man, I'll sell you these for 50 cents a piece. Ran in, hey mom, David wants to sell me a Kiss record for 50 cents a piece. Can I get them? She's like, well, you can get one. He gave me 50 cents.
No way. So you've only ever heard the first half of the album or the back half of the album, I guess?
At that point, yeah. So my brother said, get that one. It has Shout It Out Loud.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So I bought that one and we went straight to Shout It Out Loud. And I mean, like, in the concert, which is Alive 2, Shout It Out Loud is the last song. And just like the crowd is at fever pitch.
Yeah, totally.
And then the bombs go off and, my fate was pretty much sealed. Like I knew, like, I didn't even know it was a job. I just knew I want to be a guitar player. And seriously, my path was set at that moment, and I've never dreamed about being anything else. And at that, I was a guitar player before I even had a guitar.
Yeah, it's funny because it's such a universal experience, that thing of like, well, I mean, you had a different experience, but for those of us that opened up Kiss Alive 2 and looked at that photo, it was just like, what? I was actually had a different experience because for me, Kiss was everything, but it didn't feel like something I could do. It would be like watching the Avengers and thinking, I'm going to get Thor's hammer and fly through the sky. It just seemed like that's not a thing you can do. It wasn't until I got older and got into punk rock that we sort of made sense.
So like the imagery was around because I'd tag along with my brother to his friend's house. And like I said, they were all like 10 or 11. So they were like prime Kiss age in 1979.
Yeah.
So I was aware of the imagery, but since I got that record with no gatefold or anything, and my brother didn't really have those posters in his room, it was music.
And I think that's important to talk about because people always, well, they wouldn't be anything. I've always stood by the fact that I think that the songs, it's an endless conversation because I think that the songs are classic rock songs that everything from Ace's guitar solos, which I think are some of the most underrated guitar solos because they're so hummable. When you're jamming that song, exactly how the solo goes. You know what I mean?
They are compositions.
Absolutely.
He was good at being a solo composer. But like my second album, if I remember correctly, was double platinum. And,
oh wow.
There's the embossed images, but there wasn't really photos. And,
interesting.
I wasn't quite old enough for magazines yet. So like Kiss was really a musical experience for me before it was a visual experience.
That's so cool because it's really, I mean, I wouldn't say that the music is secondary, but it usually comes as one big thing coming at you. As a kid, you just kind of like, what is it? Fire, blood, all that stuff. It was like, that's the beauty of what that band was, on top of having the music and the songs that you just kind of knew every single word to.
Yeah, and then let's see, that year, the Kiss costumes were a big thing, and I remember, my brother going trick-or-treating with his friends, and my mom had taken me earlier, and, there were Kiss costumes everywhere.
No way.
And the movie came on, too. I do remember watching the movie in Halloween, because I had to stay at home.
Yeah, that was a big deal.
So I wound up, I go to the grocery store with my mom, and the bottom rack of magazines was like teeny bopper magazines. So, they were in 16 magazine all the time. So
totally.
like, oh, Kiss. So, my mom started buying me 16 magazine. And then I wound up with a subscription when I was like 5. And, I had learned how to read early in life. And, reading 16 magazine and reading about Kiss was part of the thing that made me an early reader.
That's
and then,
so awesome.
And then, you grow up and you can see the next row of magazines, and then that's Hit Parader and Circus. So,
sure.
By the time I was like 8, that's when I made the switch from the teeny bopper magazines to the real rock and roll magazines.
So what was the transition between like liking a rock band be it Kiss or whoever else, that when was the sort of like, I need a guitar, how do I get a guitar? Like what?
I had kept asking for one, and then the first sort of guitar I had was this thing called the Star Maker guitar, and it was a toy. It was a plastic toy. It was about, I don't know, about 2 feet, 1.5 feet long, and it had one string.
Wow.
And it had a little speaker in it that distorted, so you could play like Iron Man or something, just like one note, little riffs on it. And then the next year is when I got the upgrade. Christmas '82, my brother got a drum set. I got a guitar.
Oh wow. Okay. So yeah. So what kind of guitar? Are we talking like an electric guitar? It was electric? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And that's an unholy racket. We all make that unholy racket until it sounds better than, you know.
But it took a little while. Like you know, I didn't latch right onto it, and you know, like I said, I lived in Smyrna, Tennessee, and there wasn't any music stores there, and like
sure.
You know, to take lessons somewhere, you had to go to Murfreesboro or Nashville, and that was kind of far away. So I didn't start learning it until that following fall. And even then, you know, the guy was just kind of teaching me chords and stuff. And
right,
you know how it is. You want to jump right into rock guitar.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Know?
How do I play Eruption? Yeah.
And you know, I just wanted to be able to play, you know, rock riffs and stuff. And these chords didn't sound like, you know, power chords. So
no, not at all. Yeah.
It took a few years for me to really latch onto it, and when I did, I really did.
That's awesome. I mean, it's funny because I grew up in a small town as well, and it was the same thing of like a lot of, you know, Michael, row the boat ashore, you know, kind of like campfire type songs they teach you, and you're like, I don't care about this. How do I play Deuce or Smoke on the Water, even like just anything rock and roll? The
funny thing is my second guitar teacher was teaching me how to read music, and he wanted to teach me Beatles songs.
Right.
Two extremely valuable things, like, you know, learning how to read music is a positive thing, and like learning Beatles songs, like it's funny that, you know, when I was 18 and became completely obsessed with the Beatles, I went back and I learned both of those things.
Right.
And I had this guy trying to teach me the stuff when I was 10.
Yeah, but you're kind of like, first of all, the Beatles songs, I mean, it's a great investment because Beatles songs are, as a kid, they weren't jammers. Like you kind of have to know how to play the arrangements. You can't just kind of, okay, here's, you know, bust into Eleanor Rigby together. That's not a thing. It's kind of like, you're better off learning Ramones songs or something if you want to play with your friends.
Yeah, absolutely. But the thing is I didn't have any other friends that played because I was, you know, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old.
So so you started playing guitar how young?
By the time, let's see, I got the guitar when I was 7, but I started playing it when I was 8.
Oh, wow. So yeah, you were very young. That makes sense.
My brother played drums, so that gave me a drummer to play along with.
Yeah,
it helped me have good time, and, you know, if I'd make up riffs, I'd have somebody to play it along with, you know.
That makes a big difference, yeah. So how long was it after that before you started playing like in a band or anything to that nature?
I was 15.
Okay.
I got to high school, and when I got to high school, I met some other musicians that were,
you always do,
around, you know, my level of efficiency.
And were you guys kind of, had you graduated, for lack of better words, to anything beyond Kiss by that point? Were you into
I mean, like I said, you know, when I got to the next magazine rack, I started buying Hit Parade and Circus. That was 1984, and that was the year it all exploded, man. I mean, like, it was like Motley Crue, Rat, Van Halen, Twisted Sister, Scorpions, Dokken. I mean, you just go down the list of everything that came out late 83 and 84. Yeah, man, I was in.
And a guitar player's dream, really, because that kicked open a whole door of, you know, just guitar mania, really. I mean, everybody sort of had to sit in their basements and shred all day long trying to be able to play some of that stuff. I never did, but you did.
So, you know, like, it took me a little while to be able to, like, play that, or even the riffs, because like I said, I was like 9, and I didn't have the teacher yet. But there was a guitar store that opened in Smyrna called Chambers Guitars, and their guitar teacher went to high school with my brother, so he was a young guy and he knew all that stuff. And then when I started taking lessons from him, that's really when it all started. He taught me bar chords, he taught me the pentatonic scale, and then that's when it all started making sense to me. And you know, I got pretty good really fast.
Did you get a bet? Like, did you trade in the Sears for something else by any point, or how'd that work?
Uh, I didn't trade it in. In fact, I had that guitar up
That's
until
awesome.
a few years ago, and somebody broke in my house and stole a bunch of stuff.
Oh, bummer.
They left my Les Paul, but took my Sears guitar. So
wow.
to show you what an idiot that guy was.
Apparently, yeah.
Anyway.
But sentimental value is irreplaceable. So yeah, that's unfortunate.
I miss that guitar. So the next thing I got was a Cort small scale Flying V.
Oh, cool. Wow.
And I think it was a bitch to play sitting down.
Yeah, it's always kind of a
and it didn't have a whammy bar. I wanted a whammy bar. Really
right.
Bad.
You have to have a whammy bar, yeah.
So then I upgraded to a Squire Strat with a whammy bar.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then I upgraded to a Kramer.
Oh, of course. Like a Kramer Beretta or something like that?
It wasn't even, it was like a Striker 200.
Oh, yeah, I remember those. Yeah, yeah.
And then I upgraded to a Charvel, and then after that, I was done with all those kind of guitars, and that's when I started getting cool guitars.
Well, it is funny to watch that sort of, you know, like you grow up looking at Les Pauls, and there was a whole phase where, I mean, we used to buy I bought my Les Paul for $600 back then in '82, and it was, you know, because it was just out of fashion, really. It was sort of like Floyd Roses and
I didn't get my first Les Paul until 2013.
That's not surprising. I mean, it's, you know.
They were just so common. Like, by the time Slash came along, like, then everybody started playing Les Pauls, and I didn't, you know, and especially like around that time, I was still into like whammy bar stuff. Like Eddie Van Halen was my guy.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
And you know, you just couldn't have a guitar without a whammy bar.
So when was the move to Nashville? That's the big question. I mean, I guess it's like you said. Were you basically in a suburb of sorts, or was it actually like another town?
Man, it's a suburb now, but at the time, it could have been an hour out of town. It was very much small town mentality.
Sure.
I graduated high school, and 2 weeks later, I was in my first apartment. Like, I couldn't wait to move out of my parents' house and start my life.
Absolutely, absolutely. So how long does it take? Because I find Nashville to be like any city, like no matter where you go, if you decide to go to Des Moines, Iowa, it's going to take you a while to kind of get like plugged in with who's there, what's going on, the scene, that kind of thing. So, but Nashville is
a pretty long time.
Yeah, and Nashville at that time, it's probably changed so much from then until now. I assume, has it?
My God, there's no comparison. It's so different.
I can't imagine.
Completely different cities. It went from nothing happening to everything happening. And it took a while for me. I did at the time, because I got so obsessed with the Beatles. Right. I was focusing more on recording and production, and you know, I thought I wanted to be an engineer, produce like a Jeff Lynne type guy that writes and records and produces and stuff like that. And it wasn't until I started playing with the Shazam that I was more of a live guy, and they were already established in town.
Right, right.
Like, I met Hans when I was 19, and I mean, it's his band and his tunes, and we got along because we were both really into like British 60s stuff and like super melodic stuff.
Now, did that involve any sort of audition, or how did that work? You just kind of got to know him? And
no, I was just, you know, band best friend, head cheerleader, roadie, you know. I just loved the band and became like band best friend, and I toured around with them and just kind of did whatever. And then they were a 3-piece power pop type band, and you know, their first album came out, and then by the time they got started on the second one and I was the engineer on that, it was clear that they weren't going to be able to replicate this music without an extra musician. And it's just like, well, I was the guy. I was a guitar player.
I'm an extra musician. Yeah.
I could sing. Well, I was reluctant too, man. You know, like I didn't give a commitment for a while, but I still played with them and did everything with them. And, you know, there were some amazing experiences. And that was actually what gave me the reputation in Nashville. Like, in a way, I didn't even really earn it. I joined this established band that was already considered super cool in town. And
well, that's a serious leg up though, isn't it? I mean, like, you just immediately kind of put yourself in a position to be seen and to be noticed. Yeah.
And like, you know, even the guys who still own and book the biggest clubs in town met me because of that situation, which, you know, really helped me later on when, you know, me and Philip started doing our thing, because I already had a good reputation.
So was Phil the first one? I mean, because Ryan came from LA, right? Is that how that worked?
Yeah, well, Ryan lived here first, and then Desmond Child hooked him up with Hair of the Dog, and then he moved to LA and had his full Hair of the Dog experience. And then he moved back. And the crazy thing is like, Nashville's so small that every rocker should know each other. But man, I didn't meet Ryan for another 8 years.
Well, was it predominantly super country at that time? Like, was there a rock and roll scene at all? I mean, how did that work? I mean, now that there's Jack White and all those things out there, it's sort of Nashville became very, very rock and roll.
There was a small rock and roll scene. I mean, like in the late 80s, early 90s, there was a pretty vibrant scene. You know, there was a band called Valentine Saloon that was like kind of a cross between, I don't know, Jane's Addiction and Enough. I don't know. They like had an 80s glamish thing about them, but they were also early on in like that tinge of alternativeness.
Interesting.
You know, they had a nice cross, and they were like the big band in town. And, you know, we had Every Mother's Nightmare, but then there was also Jason and the Scorchers. And, you know, there was a scene here. But then, man, like, when everything changed in the early 90s, for some reason, our rock scene kind of died. And the next scene that came along was like the power pop scene. And that was Shazam and a band called Joe Mark's Brother. And, you know, there were a couple others, but it was all kind of based on like a power pop, late 60s, early 70s type vibe. And it wasn't like a huge scene, but it was definitely a scene.
I bet. Yeah. So when you started playing with Phil and I suppose to a later degree, Ryan, was that mostly, what kind of stuff were you guys doing at that time?
Oh, that was full-blown rock by then, and that was so far after the Shazam. Like, I met Philip because he read about the Shazam in a British magazine called Mojo. There's a band that sounds like the Beatles and Cheap Trick in Nashville, and then he was in the front row wearing a Love Gun shirt. And I was
no way.
I'm going to talk to that guy after the show.
We're going to be best friends. Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And, you know, we did become friends, and then he moved here a few years later, and, man, we were just friends for 10, 11 years before we ever played a note together.
Isn't that weird? That's like me and Fitz. Me and Fitz knew each other for probably 20 years before we actually ever plugged in together. Until Slash.
You guys are very much our black-haired West Coast counterpart, man.
There's
so many kind of similarities, you know.
There is, yeah.
And then I met Ryan because he was already doing Big Rock Show.
Right.
And like I said, I'd never seen them. I'd never heard of them. I'd never met him. And so Ryan had gotten asked to do the first Kiss cruise with Big Rock Show.
Right.
And the guitar player they were using at the time couldn't do it.
Are you talking about like the first ever Kiss cruise?
Yeah,
Kiss
2011. Yeah,
okay,
2011. Wow. And through a mutual friend, it was Bo Bice. Recommended Philip, but Philip had a gig with a touring country artist, so he couldn't do it. And at the time, I was living with him, and he referred me. And then, you know, Ryan asked me, and I got a great story about that day. I had a job at the time, and I came home from work, and everybody's already there hanging out. And I come in, and Ryan's in the front room, and that motherfucker sized me up. He looked me down, and he looked me up. And I went back to my room. I'm like, what the fuck was that? And then everybody's hanging out. And then later, and he asked Philip, he's like, is this the guy? And he's like, yeah, this is the guy. And he's just like, would you be interested in doing the first Kiss cruise with us? And I was just like, well, that's the stupidest question I've ever been asked.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And it was weird. I was getting divorced at the time. And man, what an awesome trade-off that was, man. Like I had a new best bud, a new family, like just
that's
like
great. It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Windows closing, doors opening.
Boy, it sure did. And then you know, like we were all friends, but our thing didn't really become like the Three Amigos until we started playing with Gene. Because then we were playing together all the time.
So yeah, that's actually kind of once we get to this is when things really get crazy, because so the three of you, I only, in speaking to you, I don't know the other three, but I'm assuming everybody's cut from the same cloth of they found a Kiss record, and that sort of changed the trajectory of their life. And then all of a sudden you're standing there. I mean, what was that call like? I assume Ryan got the call. Is that how that worked?
It was Ryan. It was all Ryan. You know, he had a good reputation with the Kiss camp already. You know, he's friends with Doc, and, you know, Doc's always talked really good about him. And, you know, Ryan's a go-getter, responsible kind of guy. You know, he does a lot of stuff, and he does it well. And they all knew that. And, you know, they had heard Big Rock Show and knew that, you know, he led a good band. And so, you know, I guess, you know, Gene kind of trusted him. So he asked to meet with him on Kiss Cruise 6 and said, you know, I have a few shows coming up, and, you know, would you like to put together a band? And, you know, he kind of had the band in his mind. Yeah, I'm sure. And originally, Gene was just going to sing like Vegas style. And we were going to pass around a bass. And then he respectfully suggested to Gene that maybe it'd be better if he played bass too. Right. Yeah. That was an easy okay. And
maybe the bass player for those songs should play bass on those songs. Yeah.
Right. And at that point, you know, we weren't going to kick a guy out. So that's how he wound up with 3 guitar players. And it helped vocally too. And Gene fell in love with the 3 guitar thing because he thought it sounded, you know, kind of symphonic.
It does, like when
you've got multiple cellos playing the same line, it just elevated it.
And like you say, the vocals were like, you guys nail all that stuff. I mean, and I suppose, you know, when you're trying to you know, play the music from a recording, there are a lot of overdubbed parts and whatnot as well. So you're able to cover a lot of parts that couldn't be done live by 2 guitars probably.
So so if you have a harmony solo like Christine 16, you know, there's a lot of studio versions of stuff we can do, and you don't lose the rhythm guitar behind it.
Totally. So what was that like? I mean, when you're suddenly like, what is it, like a rehearsal the first time you kind of strap in together? Or
Yeah. Gene came here and we rehearsed, and that first set list wasn't really a lot of Kiss stuff. It was mainly Motown and Stax.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Was Brent Fitz playing drums on that?
No, at that time it was Jared Pope, who's the Residency drummer.
Sure, yeah.
He was first.
I know him.
And then that was the only gig he did with us. And then right after that, Paul Simmons left Tom Kiefer, and then Jared took that gig.
I see.
And then Paul took our gig.
There you go.
And then, you know, at that point, it was still only supposed to be a few shows, and that's why Paul took the gig. He manages Blackbird Studios here in town.
That's right, yeah.
He has a real job. Yeah. And, so then when it looked like the Gene stuff was going to pick up and lots of dates started getting added, that was when he stepped down, and that was when we got Fitz.
That's amazing. So how long were you guys, I haven't done the math in my head because we were between Slash stuff at that point, and you guys must have gone out for close to a year worth of stuff. It feels like maybe more.
It was over a year and a half when we started.
Was it? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And you guys got to go to where did y'all go? You did a bunch of U.S. stuff, but you went to Europe. You went to. Did you go South America at all or something like that? Or was that maybe with?
Oh yeah, we went to Japan. We went to South America. We went to Mexico. We went to Europe. We went to Australia. Oh, actually, Sid didn't do the Australia stuff with us. That was when you guys.
That's right. When Matt came in at that point. You did Canada. You did a lot of different places. That's amazing. Yeah.
And that's funny because it was originally supposed to be 6 shows, and Ryan had kind of suggested, "Hey man, we could do this and do this," and he's like, "No," and then it all wound up happening anyway.
Right. Well, I'm always fascinated because Fitz, when he talks about it, he goes, you know, it's not that I'm surprised in any way, shape, or form. I've actually had the utmost respect for Gene and his ability as a songwriter. I think he has a real sense of songs. And as a bass player, he gets no love as a bass player, or at least, you know, unless it's from guys like me who go like, dude, I do lines all the time in Slash's band, and I go, this is a total Gene thing.
Yeah.
And the producer
also, Elvis, you know, like that gig that you did with Kulick, and you know, you guys did some Kiss stuff, so you had to learn it, and when you learn it and sing it, you're like, wow, there's more to this than people give them credit for.
It's a lot more challenging than you think, especially depending on what you're doing. Yeah, singing the Paul stuff is from the 90s and 80s is you know is a challenge, but I think as far as Gene goes and Fitz talking about like how you know, just how musical he is. He's got great pitch. He's got a great sense of harmony. And I'm like, I've always known that. Like Gene and Paul really have this sort of John and Paul kind of thing from a New York, you know, without taking themselves too seriously, but taking what they do seriously. I think it really shows that if Gene had gone a different route, he might have been, you know, a way more musical guy, if I may use the term, you know what I mean? But so when you guys are singing those songs, that must have been a blast. I mean, it's a blast for me, but it must have been just like, because I mean, the stack stuff, that would have been fun enough. But when you suddenly start introducing all the, was it just like you guys pretty much shouting out, we should do this, we should do that, we should do this?
So after that first, it was a corporate thing that we did the stacks and Motown stuff, sprinkled with a few Kiss songs, and then it broke the internet the next day, and he knew some more stuff was going to happen. So that was like, all right, the next show we do, you know, we're gonna do more Kiss songs, and then that was when we started compiling our list. All right, Charisma, Got Love for Sale, Almost Human, Radioactive.
Totally. You know, Gene, deep cut Gene songs. I think that's such a cool idea.
And that was the best part about that gig, is how he was game for all of that stuff. It's just like, if you have a lyric sheet, then sure, let's give it a shot.
That's amazing.
The music aspect is in the back of his brain somewhere, and you know, he can kind of find his way through it. Lyrics aren't so easy for him, but like the music part is. We had a different set list every single show, and we did over 60 different songs in the course of a year and a half.
That's amazing. And I mean, you had the right guys too, because I remember we were trying out guitar players for Slash's band. He was kind of like, I don't really care if he's a Guns N' Roses fan, and I'm kind of like, but he kind of has to be. You know what I mean? It's the same with playing with the Kiss guys. It's kind of like, you can't just have a musician. He kind of has to have an invested interest and love for the catalog, and you guys are like the perfect guys for that.
And honestly, the fans want that too, and I think that's one of the things they all really liked about us, is they saw themselves. You know, we were just, you know, these guys are diehard Kiss fans too, and you know, a lot of people like that about us.
It shows. I mean, because you guys tackle it with such love and precision and care, that it would be different if, like, because there's nothing weirder than when the guitar player goes for a solo and it's completely his own thing.
And man, like, I respect all that work that they did, and you know, it's easy, since we are fans, it's easy for us to be in the audience and know what we would expect. And if I was in the audience, I'd want to hear that solo just like I know it.
Absolutely. I mean,
I wouldn't want to hear new guys' take on it.
No, I know. Yeah, that nobody cares about the new guys' take. So now, what is the transition between that, you know, into, I mean, it's crazy enough that you played with one of the original guys, then you ended up playing with two of the original guys, because you guys have been with Ace Frehley for, I don't know.
We're pushing 2 years now.
Is that right? Wow, it's crazy. Because, I mean, you guys did the Kiss Cruise. We did the Kiss Cruise together. I was playing with Bruce and Brent and those guys and Zach. And then you guys did it with Ace and just crushed. So it's always really, you know, I mean, again, there's nobody better qualified to be like, hey, we got to put a band together for Ace. Just take those guys. Those guys are the guys. Yeah.
Gene had a lot to do with that. So we did that tour of Australia where it was both of them, and we backed both of them.
And of course, they were getting back together for the End of the Road stuff, right? So that kind of cut you guys loose.
Yeah. And I think that had a lot to do with Gene urging Ace to hire us as his band. Yeah. And you know, we by that third show, which was in Sydney, you know, Ace could feel it, you know, because we had the vocals.
Well, that's right. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you guys were both bands. You guys were playing for Gene and playing for Ace on that Australian thing. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
The only thing we would do is, like, Ryan and I would swap sides of the stage, swap from bass back to his guitar.
Yeah, right. Phil plays bass. I always forget that, because Phil's such a great guitar player, but he's got.
Well, he did the math. You see, like, you know, Ace played guitar, and before we had all agreed that was what was going to happen, it was like, maybe Ace isn't going to want 3 guitars on stage. So Phil was like, I'll play bass.
Yeah, brilliant.
So I was kind of the one on the chopping block, because he wasn't gonna chop Ryan. Just like, fuck.
Well, yeah, because that's the exact same logic I had, dude. I remember, because I play guitar as well, and I remember at one point before we got Frank playing guitar, everybody was just like, "Why don't you just play guitar?" And I go, "Because Slash is always going to need a bass player."
That's what Phil did. That was a very smart move. So I got lucky. Actually, Ryan kind of told him, like, we are a package deal, so this is the way it's going to be. And then he heard the vocals and was like, "All right."
Sure, yeah. So what is the difference primarily? Do you find that? I mean, just like from the outside looking in, because I've never really worked with any of those guys. But I get a feeling that Gene is a lot more hands-on. Not hands-on, I don't think, but Ace kind of seems like he expects you guys to have your thing together, to know the stuff. But at the same time, it seems a little bit more punk rock and free-floating in its own way, I suppose. But
actually, Gene would be the punk rock and free-floating, because like I said,
is that right?
He was game to try anything, like I said, we did 60 different songs, and like most of those were without rehearsal. Or
I do remember that kind of like that. Just put the lyrics down on the floor. It's like haven't done this one in a long time. Just put the lyrics on the floor and I'll just sing it.
He loved that loose vibe because Kiss is such a tight, organized thing. So like the looseness of it.
This song runs into this drum solo. Like everything's sort of planned out way in advance. Obviously, yeah.
So his would have been the more punk rock, go for it style.
Mm-hmm.
And Ace, we tend to stick to a set list, and we'll take songs out and put new songs in. And the credit I will give Ace is he's always releasing new music. And we joined the band right when Spaceman came out, and at any given time we were doing no less than 2 songs off the album, and we wound up doing 4 total. And for a heritage artist like Ace to do that many new songs off his album that's pretty good, because man, most guys that legendary with that much of a catalog would do 1 song.
They just kind of settle on just playing the hits per se.
And the thing, man, I read a lot of the stuff because I like to hear what fans are thinking, what they want to hear and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, he took a lot of shit. It's just like, what are y'all talking about, man? We've done 4 songs off that album, and like most guys like him would do 1.
Literally 1, yeah. Whatever the single is or whatever, yeah. Yeah, that's the interesting thing. So was there a bit of crossover from the Gene set list to the Ace set list? Maybe like Deuce or something like that? I mean, I know Ace has kind of done some of the Strange Ways I guess Gene,
We do Deuce. Honestly, that's the only song I can think of that was in both sets.
So basically, your Kiss knowledge at this point, song-wise, is doubled exponentially. So 60 with Gene. How many songs are you tackling with Ace?
I don't know. Like I said, his set list tends to. There's a lot of stuff that we've been doing since we joined the band. Like Parasite, Rip It Out, Hard Times, Strange Ways.
And you can't not do those songs. Those are like quintessential
classic.
Ace songs. Yeah,
exactly.
You have to do those. Yeah.
Shock Me, Rocket Ride, Rock Soldiers.
So again, it's got to be a trip. Like, I mean, again, I go back to the same thing, because you kind of forget, and not really that you forget, but you're a professional musician. You plug your guitar in, you play, and every once in a while, because I would have these moments playing with Slash in front of a gazillion people, and we would just be playing way back in the early days, and he would do the solo for Sweet Child of Mine, and I'd be like, this is kind of surreal, actually, because it's like, that's the guy. I played Sweet Child of Mine in 100 different cover bands. So when you're
I've definitely had those moments where it's just like, fuck me, man.
That's Ace Frehley, and that's a smoking guitar, and that's the whole thing is like, it's such a surreal history of rock and roll kind of thing. Like you and a million other guys picked up guitars because of that guy. You know what I mean? That's
a very special part of the show for me is the Detroit harmony solo. I mean, like that's such a cool thing.
Totally.
Or with Gene, like, you'd play something and you'd start playing the riff, and then that voice would start singing, and you're like, that's fucking Gene Simmons.
Yeah, I know.
But as far as my knowledge of Kiss songs, man, I've known all those songs my whole life. And
yeah, me too, yeah.
Philip and I would do a Kiss tribute show for charity every time around Christmas. And, after 5 or 6 of those, it meant our set lists were like 2.5 hours.
Amazing.
So we already knew pretty much all of that stuff.
Was it predominantly makeup years, or did you guys get into some other stuff as well?
We got into some other stuff.
Yeah,
We've even done Let's Put the X in Sex.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, that's what we do in the Bruce thing, as you know. So yeah, yeah, it's such a funny thing because I live in the Guns N' Roses family tree. Like I'm a tiny little acorn on the corner of the like in that whole world. And then there's that whole Kiss one, which I'm a part of in a indirect way now through Bruce and Bob, God bless his soul. And now you guys, because of your time with Gene and your time with Ace, puts you in a very interesting position of like, I mean, you must have gone from, being some guys from Nashville to being, universally well known, at least within the Kiss community, which means Japan and South America and Europe. I mean, Australia, there's such a far-reaching audience that they got to be able to just be thrilled that you guys are doing this.
Yeah, and it's such a wild thing because, like I said earlier, we are one of them. We're just like fans that somehow wound up on the other side of the fence. And
that's the most exciting thing. Yeah.
And we're Gene's only solo band. So, that puts us in a very unique spot on the Kiss family tree. Like,
yeah,
there's not all these branches that happen before you get to us. It's just like,
yeah, you're like not the
Gene Simmons,
yeah,
Kiss, Gene Simmons band. Like we're real high up on the tree, and then like for it to happen twice with two of the original guys, and they were my two guys when I discovered Kiss. I liked Gene and I liked Ace.
Sure, yeah.
The odds of that happening, winning Powerball.
Yeah, exactly.
Better odds than
exactly, yeah. So what's next? Are you going to try and find some other childhood heroes to play with?
I'm always.
Who else would be on that list beyond anybody in Kiss? Who else would you like to share a stage with?
Oh, fucking Paul McCartney.
Oh, I know. We all land on Paul McCartney. Trust me. That's a
pretty easy answer.
I just had a conversation with Zach Throne from Bruce's band the other day, and we were talking about he's one of those guys. He can sing, he can play guitar, he plays bass, and he's friends with Rusty and Abe from the Paul McCartney band. So when they when they were looking for guys, they thought of Zach but couldn't find Zach. That's the story.
Wow.
Anyway. I go, dude, that is the worst thing in the world to hear. That'd be like hearing, I don't know, Pamela Anderson in the 90s wanted to date you and she couldn't find your number. Or whatever your equivalent is. I don't know.
Man, honestly, I don't have anybody specific, man. I'm just a big fan of 60s rock and 70s rock,
Me too.
Cool heritage artists, I'm kind of just open to stuff. Like the next thing I have going on is Philip and I recorded an EP with Michael Wagner many years ago. It's kind of just been in the cloud for years. And that's finally coming out on July 24th on Dave Ellison's label, EMP Music Group.
Fantastic. What's the project called?
The Rock and Roll Residency.
Perfect. That's amazing. That's great.
At first we kind of thought that we should come up with a band name, but everybody knows us as, the
Rock and Roll Residency, yeah. And for those that don't know, Rock and Roll Residency is a Nashville band that plays, well, you play a ton of stuff, but like lots of covers and lots of...
and it's everything from 60s American and British rock to 70s AM radio to FM deep cuts to new wave of British heavy metal.
That's amazing, yeah. That'd be a blast.
Man, we might do Love Is Alive and then do fucking Wrathchild by Iron Maiden right after that.
I got to see that. I got to play in that. That sounds like a blast.
Actually, the first time I met Fitz, he sat in with us.
I heard that.
I met him on stage.
Amazing. That's funny how that happens. That happens a lot, doesn't it? Brent's one of the greats. I mean, Brent's also one of those guys that's a real stickler for, like, if you're going to do Kiss songs, we have to do Kiss songs correctly.
That is what I loved about having Brent in the band. He thinks the same way we do about that stuff. The drum parts, like they go, and he was a voice too, so that gave Gene 4 singers.
Totally.
Even if it was a 2-part harmony, like you got 2 guys that could double each other, and that just, gave it this lift.
Totally stacks everything.
And I miss playing with him very, very, very much.
Yeah, he's the best. But Matt's amazing. Matt's an amazing drummer.
Absolutely, and he's got the same thing, man. He's a singer too, so
he's a really good singer. Yeah.
Ace has 4 singers, so we didn't lose that when we had to transition.
Make the shift. Yeah, that's amazing. So really quickly, you and I are both working on a project with Brandon Fields, which is a kid out of Kentucky that just during the coronavirus quarantine is just sort of one of these things that I'm sitting around kind of like doing stuff like this now because I'm just like looking for something fun to do. And then like, you know, you reach out to me and say, hey, this guy's got this thing going on. Are you interested? And I'm like, sounds like fun, you know, helps me with my home studio skills and whatnot. And it's been really fun. So, I mean, there's not too much we can say about it other than the fact that Brandon's a guy. You came across him when he was a kid, 14 or something like that?
Yeah, so I guess he was from Oak Ridge. So the Shazam did a show in Oak Ridge, and there were these two 14-year-old kids like hanging out waiting for us. And
wow.
They had apparently read about us in the paper, and, you know, it was like Cheap Trick, The Who, you know, just all these classic rock influences. So, you know, they showed up, they helped us load in and stuff. And
amazing.
It was just kind of neat, you know, these 14-year-old aspiring guitar player kids hanging out. And through social media, you know, we had sort of stayed in touch. And, you know, as he got older, he started playing in bands, and then he started doing, you know, regional touring, and, you know, his situations got bigger and bigger, and we just sort of stayed in touch. And, you know, he wound up in Lexington and came to our Ace show in Lexington. And
right.
I don't know, we just kind of started talking more and more. And, you know, then he asked me if I wanted to play a solo on his record. And then he was like throwing out maybe hitting up Matt Starr to play drums on it. I'm like, send him a message, dude. Like, I know what we're all doing right now, and it's nothing. You're like, like,
yeah, exactly.
And, you know, Matt advertises for, hey, man, you got a project? I'll play on your project. So I knew he'd be receptive. I'm like, send him a message.
Yeah, of course.
And then he brought up, you know, maybe hitting you up. And I was just like, send him a message, man.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. It's a good time to hit everybody up when they're like, we're literally sitting at home watching 7 seasons of Star Trek or something. You know, it's kind of like.
And man, he like wound up, you know, he's in his mid-20s, man. He's become a very, very good guitar player. And, you know,
that's great.
Kind of neat to be on this side where you're sort of providing inspiration for somebody. You know, if I am that guy, I'm not really aware of it.
That's great, though. I mean, like you say, it's like, you know, almost every show you play, there's somebody in the audience that goes, I want to do that. And that's the kind of stuff that, you know, that I always kind of don't take that lightly. I think it's very exciting when.
I don't either. Because, man, I still feel like a fan. Like, I'm just
a
fan who got lucky, and I get to play with people that, you know, I might have listened to. You know, Corabi was another one. You know, I love
Corabi, yeah. Yeah, of course,
and, you know, I wound up being the guy who brought that whole album to a live setting. I
forgot to even touch on that. Yeah, that's great. I mean, the Corabi stuff, I mean, that's, yeah, he's an amazing talent as well. So that's amazing. So when is the Rock and Roll Residency EP coming out?
It comes out July 24th. The single comes out tomorrow. And we'll be on Lizzie Hale's show talking about that tomorrow.
That's exciting. Of course, tomorrow, who knows when this is airing, but
yeah.
All right, man. Well, thanks so much. I really, really appreciate you taking the time to.
Well, man, it's fun talking to you. It's good to see your face.
I know. Whether we're recording it or not, it's always good to catch up, especially since this project came up. I was like, well, let's hang, you know, and this is the only way we can hang, you know.
And now we're going to be on an album together.
We're going to be on an album together. Maybe we'll get on stage together. That'd be exciting. It doesn't happen enough, that's for sure.
Have I even played with you on stage?
I don't know. We did a Kiss Cruise jam with the Rock and Roll Reds. Was that? No, that's the Big Rock Show.
Big Rock Show.
Different thing. Different version.
Did you play with Big Rock Show?
I got up and played bass on a cool Gibson Grabber. We did like some Kiss songs. I can't remember. I don't know if we were playing. There was so many people on stage. I don't really remember because they were getting guest people up to sing, like just people from the audience were singing. So it was madness up there. I don't really remember.
I don't remember that.
Fitz played drums, and Tyson.
I remember now. It was in the atrium. I do remember that.
Atrium, now. Yeah. That was a blast. Yeah. No, I want to do more of that. It sounds like if I was in Nashville, I'd be at those Rock and Roll Residency gigs all the time, or just looking to.
Well,
jam.
We don't really, you know, when stuff picked up with Ace and Gene, we kind of squashed our weekly thing because you can't tell people you're doing a weekly show if you only play 26 weeks out of the year.
Exactly, yeah.
But so now we do one like maybe every 3 months when, you know, there's not a coronavirus.
That makes it, well, yeah, exactly. That makes it a big deal, though. The less you do it, the more, more special it is, more specialized. Yeah. Well, great, dude. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate you tuning in. It looks like you have some awesome weather and nature to go enjoy. By the looks
Well,
of
I'm gonna go back inside and work on that song. So
yeah. See, that's a musician. You go from just like immediately go from the nice outdoors back into a dark, dim room to write something. I appreciate that. Yeah. Now that's rock and roll.
All right.
Good to see you, brother. See you soon.